Spring, on one hand, can be about so many bright, gorgeous blooms, those clean colours, the sky blue, the verdant lime green, all of those gorgeous bright yellows. However, sometimes it's nice to be inspired by something a little bit different. So why not make a lilac in spring bouquet with me? Be inspired by the deeper, darker, more sultry tones that this season has to provide. I'm going to begin with a selection of gorgeous flowers. And when I say gorgeous, I really do mean gorgeous. I have some Fritillaria meleagris, a favourite of mine. I have some beautiful ranunculus. I have some lilac. I have some very early sweet pea, and I have some very special clematis too. A gorgeous variety of deep blooms in, frankly, a gorgeous palette of mauves and puce and plum, which I'm excited to be sharing here with you today. Simple spiral technique is the order of today's bouquet, and as you can see, I'm beginning with my stems in my recessive hand, in my left hand, and I'm adding those flowers in on a 45-degree angle. Now, the bouquet that I'm sculpting here today, the bouquet that I'm building, is based on the spiral technique. So I'm taking each stem and adding it into the bouquet on a 45-degree angle. What this does is it allows me to spiral every single stem around something called the binding point. The binding point is exactly where you see my hand holding the bouquet right here. And it's exactly where all of the individual stems will spiral around each other, creating a gorgeous display of stems that all flow in exactly the same direction. It's the most common way, the most popular way to create a hand-tied bouquet, and it's used by florists up and down the country and across the world when you're looking to create a rather gorgeous bouquet that really allows every stem to radiate out beautifully from a central point, creating a gorgeous display of flowers as we can see here. Now let's take another look at the blooms that I'm actually utilizing in today's bouquet. In this shot we can see some beautiful sweet pea, and just in the top right corner we have a brand new clematis grown by Marjoram Park called Clematis Sophia. It is absolutely incredible. We've got some Virtuoso Saura Scabiosa, also by Marjoram Park in there, teamed with some beautiful ranunculus, some gorgeous lilac, a whole host of delectable spring blooms really, and all of these flowers are so delicate and so light, they're just a joy to work with. I know maybe sweet peas are what some people may consider to be a summer bloom, but it really depends upon where you are in the world. Here in England, sweet peas are definitely a summer flower, but we can get them a little bit early, and these ones are absolutely gorgeous. I simply couldn't resist that melange of grey and plum tones that you see here. All in all, a delectable mixture of beautiful plum and puce and gorgeous purple tones, which we're bringing together in today's hand-tie bouquet. Now that we've had a look at all the blooms, let's go and take a quick look now at how a bouquet is getting on. So we're continuing to add the stems into the bouquet, and you can see we're building up what is essentially a gorgeous dome shape. Now what I mean by this is that the bouquet should be a little higher in the centre of the bouquet and a little lower towards the edges. That will create essentially a gentle dome shape where it's higher in the middle and lower on the sides. Now of course there are a million different ways to make bouquets, and indeed there are a million bouquets in the world, so it doesn't always have to be this way. We can of course play around with forms and do some things that are incredibly different to the bouquet that I'm sharing with you today. However, the classic shape that I'm creating, this classic domed hand-tie bouquet, is pretty common for a number of reasons. First of all, because it's radial in nature, and by that I mean all the stems are radiating out from the central binding point, it means that each and every stem can be displayed beautifully in the vase, can be seen and appreciated because it's radiating out from one certain angle and isn't competing or crossing with any other stems. It also works very, very well for display in a number of vases. You don't need a certain type of vase to have in position for this bouquet. The added benefit of working with the spiral bouquet technique means essentially that we're not having any of our stems crossing. There's no interlacing of stems or crisscrossing of stems in any way, shape or form. This means that if we want to take a stem out and rearrange it, put it back in on a different angle or in an entirely different position, there's no issue doing this whatsoever. We can do it without any problem because we can literally lift the stem out and then place it in on a different angle on a different place with no problem at all. Nothing will need to be broken or snapped or removed, or honestly it's just a breeze. Let's take a look now at some Fritillaria meleagris, the snake's head Fritillaria, which is one of my absolute favourite spring blooms. I'm going to be tucking these in and through. Now you'll note that in this bouquet I'm actually working on different levels. I have my chunkier blooms, for example my big gorgeous juicy lilac stems deep in the bouquet. This provides it a good base, a good mass. And then my more delicate flowers, my gorgeous Clematis Amazing Sophia, my beautiful Sweet Pea, my beautiful Scabiosa, all of those are floating delicately above the heavier blooms. Now this is just makes good sense, right? When you're building a bouquet, often you want your bigger, chunkier blooms lower down and your more delicate blooms on the top. If indeed it were the other way around, you would have a pretty tricky time seeing those more delicate blooms hidden underneath the chunkier blooms. So chunkier, larger blooms a little bit lower in the bouquet, and our lighter, more delicate blooms floating delicately towards the top of the bouquet, exactly as we can see right here. Now with our bouquet beautifully spiraled and every stem exactly where we want it to be, it's now time to bind off our bouquet. I'm going to take a length of string, fold it in half to make a little noose, and then wrap the two loose ends around the binding point and pull them through the loop that I've created. Once I've pulled these nice and tight, the bouquet should feel nice and firm. Everything should feel like it's not going to come apart, should feel like it's nice and strong and in position. Then simply I pop 2 knots in that string, 1 and 2, and then I go in with a sharp pair of snips and trim that string right down. It's then time to display our vase. Let's take a look at it in position right now. And there we have it, the Lilacs in Spring Hand-Tied Bouquet. Let's take a closer look at the melange of blooms and tones that we have compiled, that we've built into today's hand-tied bouquet. I don't know about you, but something about the feeling of this bouquet just feels entirely unexpected, and if I can say so myself about my own work, a little bit more special for that reason too, because indeed it is so unexpected. Springtime can often bring so many gorgeous, bright, clean hues, so many gorgeous yellows from daffodils, from narcissi, tulips in very bright, clean colours also, and sometimes that can feel a little bit loud and a little bit clashing. So I think by opting for these plum tones, by opting for these puce tones, these hues of bruise and violet, I think just adds something very gorgeous, very delectable into an interpretation of spring. I mean, I do know this is only flower arranging, right? This is only floral design. We're not changing the world here, but in some ways, I guess we kind of are. You know, we're changing our own experience. We're creating something beautiful and we're crafting something very, very special in the moment to appreciate. And I think that can be a very, very lovely thing and a very worthwhile thing to be doing too. Back to this bouquet. Here we have a gorgeous selection of lilacs in the spring. It was a joy to create this bouquet. And if you're interested in following any more of my tutorials, do check out my YouTube channel. There's a ton of gorgeous, beautiful videos on there ready for you to dive on into, showing all manner of different floral designs. Equally, head to learnjosephmassey.com, my website, where you'll find a host of free, gorgeous tutorials and lessons and extra little bits and pieces for you to dive on into. There's also our little blog there, the Cultivate blog, which you can check out a host of fantastic articles, how-tos, opinion pieces, all around florals and more. Hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you on the next one pretty soon. Have a good one.